Most people believe that it takes two to fix a broken relationship. But what if that belief is the very thing keeping your relationship stuck? Today on the Expansion Room, we have expert Larry Bilotta here, who is a marriage coach, and he is going to be talking about his experience in a 27-year marriage where he suddenly began to figure out what the issue was and how he could solve it. And now he's worked with hundreds, if not thousands of individuals to help get them to a place where they could say they were able to save their marriage. So, Larry, welcome.
Shervon, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. And so let's start right from the beginning, right? Take us back to those 27 years of your marriage. What was going on for you in the marriage, but more importantly, what was going on for you inwardly?
So I'm married to a very, very strong woman.
Mm-hmm.
As a very strong woman. And so in the beginning, into the early 90s, I'm sorry, this marriage begins in the 70s because they impeached Richard Nixon. That's 1973. That's where it begins.
Wow.
So at that time, I don't know that there's a thing called soft-hearted men and hard-natured women, or hard-natured men and soft-hearted women. I don't know that. I don't learn that until late, down further down the road. But so I was a soft-hearted man married to a hard-natured woman. And so why are you soft-hearted? When you're a soft-hearted man, you really care about what people think of you. I mean, what they think of you is like life and death. And also the people that are less soft-hearted, when they are in front of people, that's the people they care about. Yeah. People in the background, people in the history, they don't care that much about them, but who's ever in front of them, they care about a lot.
Okay.
So I was a soft-hearted man, and I was caring what people thought of me. And so this woman I married, she is a very strong-natured woman. She's a kind of a take charge, call the shots type of woman. Mm-hmm. So a soft-hearted man would do pretty well with a hard-natured woman because she would manage him and tell him what to do, and it would work out really well, right? Mm-hmm. So at the time, I think I was like 23 years old, and when I'm 23 years old, I don't know anything. I can't put two sticks together. So as I'm trying to work through this marriage, and by the way, we started fighting in the very first week of the marriage. And
wow! Okay,
it didn't happen like a conventional marriage where you plan a wedding, you plan a shower, you bring friends, right? No friends, no shower, no nothing, right? So a court, like what was it? One witness, right?
Yeah.
And then we come home and tell her mother, and that was the wedding, right? So we don't have an open family. In fact, my parents and her parents did not even talk to each other or acknowledge each other were alive. That's how separate they were. They had no interest in meeting each other at all. It's almost like we can't handle this thing you're doing, the two of you, we can't handle it. And that's kind of how they were, right? They didn't want to know about each other. And the reason they didn't is because my father was a teacher and my mother was uneducated. And so I think both mom and dad were not very educated people, either. So no college, right? Other than my father, he was the only one who had college. And so we had different value systems than the parents. And therefore we had different value systems in the two of us.
Yeah.
So Marcia was the strong woman. Larry was a soft-hearted man. And I lived a lot by fear. I was afraid of her. I was afraid of her meanness, her cruelty, her judgment, right? And so I lived in fear of her, right? Because I didn't know anything. So as I started to live this way, I think it probably took 2 or 3 years for me to realize that I had to become the learner and she was going to be the non-learner. So she's not going to learn. I'm going to learn, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
who's my teacher? I started realizing that she's my teacher, right? And she turns out to be a mean, tough teacher, right? And so she's like smashes your head against the wall with the facts, right? And so soft-hearted men, they can't handle that. They can't handle that kind of that level of honesty, and right. So all that need to become a soft-hearted man with some kind of strength, I didn't know what to do because uh, what I was learning is that she provided pain for me, and as long as she provided pain for me, I stayed the learner. So every time an event happened and she'd get upset and wild and mean, uh, I would start to write on yellow journal pads that I'm writing what I'm learning, what I'm discovering. And so in that writing, because remember what happens is after we have this fight, then we separate, and then I go alone in my room and I start writing, right?
Okay.
So what am I writing? I'm writing an education for myself.
Mm.
Because I'm starting to learn, like, so why did that happen? And why
Mm-hmm.
do I think that way? And what do I really believe? And, I started to think like very deeply because the fresh emotional trauma of what just happened was keeping me motivated. And so
Okay.
I started to learn because the more pain I had, the more I wanted to learn. So that went on for, I think, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 years or so. And now I started to teach myself things, and I started to become my own teacher, right? But she was
Okay.
really driving the learning because she was providing pain. And so now I teach a course now, and the course is called the Environment Changer. And the reason it's called the Environment Changer is called the Environment Changer because you change the environment of your mind. You don't change the environment of the
Mm.
world, you change the environment of your mind. And so that's
Okay.
why it's called that way. So people can't even say environment changer. They can't say it. They can't say it. They can't remember it. So it's a bad marketing name, but it's really a good name for what I believe in. I believe you got to
Yeah.
change the environment of your mind, because if you don't change your environment of your mind, your meaning of your world is not going to change. And
Yeah.
so that's really what was happening to me. I was starting to change the meaning of everything. And so what I was tending to realize is that I'm living in fear. Now, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
realize that right away, but I realized I was living in fear of her. I was living in fear of her meanness, her explosions, her attacks, right, her surprises. I was afraid. And so as I
Mm-hmm.
started thinking about fear, I started to really study myself in fear. And I started realizing that fear comes out of meaning, and meaning comes out of the movie of the world. So you have a movie and you have a meaning. And so I called it the meaning and movie machine because it starts everything. So once you
Mm.
have meaning and you have a movie of the scene of your life, that begins everything. It begins a chain. So the first thing that happens when the meaning and movie occur, the first thing you get is you get a feeling. And once you get that feeling from the meaning in the movie, you then get a belief. And once you get that belief from that feeling, you then get an attitude. And once you get an attitude from that belief, you then get an action. So that all starts with the meaning of the movie. And so
Okay.
I'm learning this, and I'm starting realizing that she is my movie. She's the movie I'm living in, and I'm the movie that I'm living in. Right? So I started to put myself in the movie. I started to put her in the movie. And I started realizing this level of conflict, this level of non-cooperation, this level of fear. Uh, what if I could start to change the fear that I lived in? And so I started to realize there was like an arc then. It's
Mm.
to go from fear to love. So to travel from fear to love, you can't get to love until you pass through peace. So you got to get to peace first before you can get to any kind of love. And so,
Mm.
so for several years, I began to think like, what's going to make me feel peaceful? And so I was starting to think, I'm reading this in self-help books like Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
But thoughts are things was one of the things he taught. Thomas Edison said that too. So
That's right.
thoughts are things. And the first time I heard that, I had a hard time. How could it become a thing? Like a thing is like a vase. A thing is a watch. How can a thought become a thing? And so I started to slowly realize that the reason thoughts are things is because when you think a thought, what happens is an energy forms in you about that thought. Because the thought is an idea. And the idea has the word actually, if we look at the word, fear is a word, and we look at the synonyms of fear, the synonyms sit around the word. So fear, anxiety, doubt, worry, right? Those are floating around the word fear, right? So it's now a three-dimensional thing. It's now not a word on a line. It's a three-dimensional energy, right? It's the word and its synonyms. And all together, the word and the synonyms create an energy, and you like step into the energy. So I was stepping into fear.
Yeah.
And so I started realizing I'm stepping into fear over and over again. It's like Charlie Brown, who, he kicks the football and it falls, and he keeps doing it over and over again, right? So I started to realize that I have to love myself, but I can't love myself until I get closer to peace. And so my goal became to become more peaceful. And so as I'm starting to think, my thoughts were becoming things. As I started to think more peaceful thoughts, I started to slow down a little bit, not a lot. I started to slow down what I could think and started to think that this thought would join to that thought. So, for instance, like the thoughts of allowing became more of a thought that was peaceful for me, whereas expectation was not a thought that was peaceful. In fact, whenever I had expectation, I didn't have any peace. So I started moving towards allowing, and allowing became an idea. I ended up creating an idea called the black stamp. And so the black stamp is the idea that there's three stamps, and the first stamp is the red stamp, and it's when you stamp the ink pad, it says this this is not good and I don't like it, right? So I resist it with the red stamp. The green stamp is I'll do it, but I won't like it, right? And the black stamp is this is good, I accept it. So that was the black stamp. The contrast between the red and the green stamp is the black stamp. And so the black stamp became a visual for me to start thinking like, this is good, I accept it. And that now I started to get around her temper and her anger, and I started to think the thought, this is good, I accept it. So I didn't like do it very, very good in the beginning, but the more I did it, the more I started thinking, this is good, I accept it. I was black stamping the events. And therefore, I was starting to create meaning. And I started to notice that the meaning of the movie were coming together to start to create that chain of events that led to a better set of actions. So what was really happening is I was losing my fear. I was becoming more peaceful. And as I was becoming more peaceful, I almost didn't even notice anything outside. I was so in my mind that I was really focused on the way I was thinking. And so this is like maybe 7, 8 years, 9 years later, I started to see that Marcia was a little nicer, that Marcia was not as upset as long or as often. And I started to realize like, oh, why is that happening? What I'm doing, right? So I'm changing the environment of my mind, and my environment, the meaning outside is starting to change.
It's starting to
So,
change, yeah.
so that leads to a change in perception. So now my perception is starting to change. And so when I was living in fear, I was on edge that Marcia was even existing, that she was even here, because there was always a threat in the air, right? But as I started to change the meaning, as I started to move towards peace, the outer environment didn't seem as threatening and anywhere near as often. And so I started to see it differently. And so everybody knows that seeing it differently is a good thing. Everybody knows they should do that. I should see this differently. But you can't see it differently until you change the meaning. Until you change the meaning and the movie, you can't change much of anything. And so that's really why it took one to heal the marriage. It took one because one person has to start to become happier. has to start
Yeah.
better about themselves. So in my case, and when I started in 1973, I didn't love myself. Now, I did not know I didn't love myself
Right.
because I had to put on a public face of loving myself, right? And acting confidently and all those things. But I started to realize that I didn't love myself. And so in a lot of these fights and blowups after the note taking started, I started to have to realize that I really don't love who I am. I don't feel confident. I didn't feel confident. I feel shy. I feel worried. I feel insecure around people because I'm soft-hearted. And that was another big discovery to learn. I'm soft-hearted. Like I
Mm-hmm.
almost didn't want to admit you're a man and you're soft-hearted. What a wimp, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but then I started realizing there's women who are hard-natured, and
Yeah.
they're take charge. They're call the shots. They take things in their own hands. They're very decisive people,
Yeah.
and it's almost like they know what they want and they don't have any doubt about it. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, seldom wrong and never in doubt kind of thing. And so this is what led me year by year by year, a little bit at a time, to start realizing that I had to start to feel more peace in my life and more love for myself. And when I
And
started to feel
so,
more peace in my life and more love for myself, the world started treating me a little different.
yeah.
And so it almost, it's not like an overnight success at all.
Right.
So nothing in my story is an overnight success.
Yeah.
So I talk about 27 years of a marriage made in hell, and in the 28th year I fell in love with my wife. Why did I fall in love with my wife? Because I was falling in love with myself. And
Yeah.
why was I doing that? Because I was leaving fear and moving to peace, to eventually leading to love. And so
Right.
the ideas of love, kindness, uh, forgiveness, thoughtfulness, spontaneity, excitement, like all those kinds of things are things that you just don't think about until a thought becomes a thing. And when you think the thought and you repeat the thought is becoming a thing because it's becoming a thing in the world, a thing that
Yeah.
actually exists. It actually exists as a thing. So,
Beautiful.
uh,
And so there's this like moment where basically you stopped waiting for
yes,
things to like magically get better in your external world, and you rescued yourself by turning the lens on yourself or turning the lens inward to do that work.
yes, because what I was doing is, now you call it a lens. Um, I think that if I'm looking through a set of glasses, what's the rose-colored glasses I do?
Yeah.
Right, when you're looking through rose-colored glasses, everything looks better. So
Yeah.
when you're looking through rose-colored glasses, you're going to say, um, "This is good
Mm-hmm.
because," and then you have to tell the story. Why is this good? And so, when in telling the story about my angry wife, who is generally she was not a happy person, right? Because she had a lot of resentments from her childhood and all these kinds of things that happened in childhood, and she had carrying those with her, and didn't have any therapy or anything like that. And so she had these things that she had to carry. I had things that I had to carry because what I grew up in is a couple, mom and dad, who shut down when they had difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
So when my mother was an alcoholic, and my father was a gambler, right? So he's a teacher gambler, and my mother was an uneducated alcoholic, and so that's who's raising me. And they shut down as a practice, and
Yeah.
they pretended things didn't hurt or didn't bother them, and so they didn't talk about problems, and they just wouldn't talk about problems. So that's my world. In the meantime, Marsha's growing up with a mother who throws a truck at her son's head and splits it open, right? Or a
Mm.
guy who's when he yells at the kids, he says, don't, don't he doesn't want his TV to be disturbed, right? He
Mm-hmm.
screams in anger, right? So that's how
Yeah.
she grows up in an angry, confrontational home, right?
Right.
I'm growing up in a shutting down home. She's growing up in an angry, belittling home. So
Yeah.
what are we going to do when we marry? We marry. We're going to bring our two invisible lifestyles into that
Yep.
marriage,
That's
right?
right.
And so now the only thing that
That's what
saved us,
every single couple does.
that's right, what, well, because we're living on a subconscious mind. So
Hmm.
the marriage that we had that we couldn't understand, we didn't know what it was. She had to use her forcefulness on her soft-hearted man, and the soft-hearted man had to run for cover because he didn't know what to do or how. He had to learn that. But this turned out to be a 40-year marriage,
Mm.
and so 40-year marriage was that's a long time
Yeah.
to stay with one person.
Yeah. Doesn't happen, it seems, that often anymore.
So Marcia dies in 2019, and
Okay.
I was there for that, um, and and so this was like the loss of my teacher. And I'll tell you, when I lost my teacher, I was
Mm.
really disoriented because
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was going to do, because I didn't make a good single guy. I had to be, there's some people that are like made to be married. So I lived 4 years without a relationship. And
Yeah.
4 years without a relationship, that relationship that you have, your intimate relationship, is your mirror.
Yeah,
It's
it
your
is.
mirror. And,
That's
and the
exactly
way mirrors work is so astoundingly complex and wonderful
right.
because what happens is the mirror, who doesn't, by the way, want to be your mirror. No mirror wants to be your mirror, right? And and so they're picking up your subconscious and they're turning it into behavior and they're acting it out right in front of you.
Yeah.
And so that can be very upsetting to be a person's mirror. And I remember one day, because I was telling the whole mirror story, and a lady came on in one of the evenings of my course, and she started attacking me personally because I wasn't giving her the answers she needed. And
Mm.
so she was mirroring back something in me that I didn't want to see. And so I was like really torn because she's being like accusing, right? And
Mm.
and it's a public call. There's other people there, right? So, and I'm a soft-hearted man. I care what everybody thinks about me, right? So I'm thinking, oh, what am I going to do? She's attacking me personally. She's criticizing me as the person that's causing her failure. And so I had that mirror right there, and happening to me. And I said, uh, I then started talking about. I said, you realize you being as upset at me as you are mirroring to me something that is in me. You're mirroring back something that I don't want to know, something I don't want to hear, something I wish would go away. And
Mm.
you're not making it go away because mirrors don't let things go away.
That's right.
They will confront you. So,
Yeah.
in the years that I was not married, I had no mirror to mirror back what I was, and that's the greatest thing about a marriage relationship is it mirrors back your subconscious mind to you. Because if you
Hmm.
don't know your subconscious mind, how are you going to learn about it? And in
That's
those
right.
4 years, I didn't learn anything about my subconscious mind because I had no mirror.
Yeah. Our relationships do that. That is for sure.
So
That is
now
for
I'm
sure.
married, and so Eugenia is my second wife,
Okay.
and I realize she's a perfect mirror, and so I'll have times when I'm thinking like, well, everything's fine. I think I'll do this project or something, and all of a sudden she'll say, so what's wrong with you? And I'll know what this is. Oh, here comes the mirror. What's wrong with you? Oh, geez.
Mm-hmm.
She's feeling something, and I don't know what it is, but she knows what it is. And that's why I came up with the slogan, the mirror is never wrong. Because the mirror is never wrong.
I like that. I like that. And so, when was the moment? Like, walk us through. When was the moment that you found yourself looking at this body of learning that you'd had in your first marriage, and you said, "This is something I can teach to someone else that
It
I
wasn't
want
that
to."
kind of it wasn't that kind of realization. Um, what was happening is that people would come to me in my personal life, uh,
Hmm.
and I never saw myself as a person who knows things, right?
Okay.
Uh, But what happened is when somebody stood in front of me with a problem, all of a sudden I have something to share with them. And so I would start to share what I was learning, like
Okay.
some component of what I was learning. And because I was sharing something, then the next thing I saw as a soft-hearted man, I want a reaction. I want to see that people are getting some kind of benefit. And so when I would see that benefit and they'd light up or like, oh, I never thought about that, say that kind of thing, I started to realize, oh, that was good then? Oh, so it helped me and it helped you? That was the
Uh-huh.
realization. It helped me and it helped you?
Yeah.
Like, oh, so I guess we're the same then. And so that was the realization. It came from those moments when people were coming with their problems. And
Okay.
I had something because I had been spending so many years with my notes uh,
Mm-hmm.
and discovering these things into tools and learning patterns of what happens when and what's it like when you really become the one who heals the marriage, the person who heals the relationship. And why do you
Yeah.
do it? Because you heal your mind. You
Yeah.
heal your mind, you heal your life. And so when we're talking about healing the mind, we're not talking about something that's little. It's
Yeah.
not like what you should do. You should heal your mind. You can't
Right.
see it that way. When you're talking about healing your mind, you're talking about a really big thing. It's a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
So what happens is you need some mirror in your life to reflect back what's in your subconscious mind. So I describe it as a subconscious that's a beer vat. A beer vat is a really big tank. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's your subconscious mind. Above the subconscious mind is the conscious mind, which is a mason jar. And the mason jar is where we're living out. We're living out of by the way, our words are in that mason jar. So we have words, we have explanations, right? But the subconscious doesn't have any of that. It doesn't have any words. It has urges and needs, but it doesn't have words. And so we
Yeah.
can't get our conscious mind, which is all word based, to connect with the subconscious because it doesn't have any no platform to work on.
Yeah.
So as I started to see the subconscious is like who was it? Joseph Murphy. He wrote a book about the subconscious mind, and it's a really positive book, really
Mm.
positive about the subconscious, right? So the whole book is just glowing with the subconscious as the great intelligence that you always have with you, and if you calm down and connect to it, it's going to help you in every kind of way. So this is how every chapter of the book reads. It's like the subconscious is a wonderful thing. Never that the subconscious is a problem, ever. And so that's what the whole point of the subconscious was, that it's a positive thing in your life. And so,
Nice.
the psychologists, the Freud and the young psychologists, they have always said for years that we live 90% out of our subconscious mind. And people
Yeah.
who live out of their conscious mind can't understand that because they don't put the subconscious in their life. They don't think
Right.
there is the subconscious. They know the
Right.
conscious mind is all they know. And so they don't
Yeah.
know that 90% of your life is lived out of the subconscious mind. And so I tested that for a while when people would call me for the first time. I said, have you ever heard the psychologists say that we live 90% of our life out of our subconscious mind? Like 90% out of our subconscious mind? Well, I thought it was out of our conscious mind. What do you mean out of our subconscious mind? How does that happen? So if you picture this big beer vat, and the beer vat has all the memories of childhood. That's 55,000 hours of those 10 years, 55,000 hours of childhood time. And in the 55,000 hours, there's all kinds of events there. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think of the book that Oprah wrote with Bruce Perry, the psychologist. He said, so Oprah's talking about her childhood, of course, and her painful childhood, right? And so they're also talking about his time working with all kinds of people, and they're talking about the subconscious. And so what happens is from the beer vat up into the little mason jar comes these ideas that we don't know are there.
That's right.
And the ideas we think of them as beliefs, but
Yeah.
they're really just ideas. But because they hold so firmly to what we hang on to, we can't even escape it.
Yeah.
The subconscious is coming up into the conscious. And so,
Absolutely.
so as I was talking about people in their childhoods, and I'm interviewing like over 2,000 people about their marriages, I talk about childhood over and over again. And I use my scale, 10 to 0.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time I talk to somebody, I'm talking to the stayer. I don't talk to the lever. You know why? Because levers don't want to learn anything. They don't want to talk to me, right? So I'm talking to the stayer, and the stayer is telling me about how wonderful this person they married was. Like Chuck was so great. He was such a great guy, and he said all these wonderful things. And then all of a sudden, snap, something happened. Like a father died, or there's a job loss, or some financial loss, or some health challenge, or something, some snap. And when the snap happened, he changed his whole personality.
Mm.
And I started to hear that over and over again, like big change, big change, big change. He enters the midlife crisis. And so I'm learning this over and over again, and I start to realize what's the pattern of these people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to call them buckers, 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 like the bucking bronco. And why
Mm-hmm.
are they buckers? Because these people, and we're talking about all kinds of people, athletes and politicians and executives and just taxi drivers, everybody. And everybody is a bucker when they have painful childhood experience of their life. So what they do is they go through a 3-step process. Step number 1 is stop. I'm not doing that. So they consciously, with their conscious mind, say to the message coming up from the subconscious, from the big vat, they say, stop, I'm not doing that. And the second step is they borrow a value from somebody they know. And they
Mm.
borrow the value. And then the third step is they act the value out as if they had it. Now you think, step 1, stop. Step 2, borrow a value. Step 3, act it out. Why is that why is that some kind of formula? Well, what's happening there? Well, this is what these people actually do in their minds privately. They don't share it with anybody. They don't even know they're doing it themselves. But when
Mm.
I had enough interviews, I started realizing they're going through that 3-step process. And
Okay.
when they say stop, they're literally fighting their subconscious mind. Stop, I'm not doing that. And step 2, they're acting out that I'm going to borrow a value that's going to make my life better. So they borrow the value and they become so good at it, so convincing, so believable. Nobody understands why. But they become so good at this value that they
Mm.
look like they've got it. And so the staying spouse will say, oh, he was such a good man. He never, ever lied to anybody. He was so honest. And then they'll tell
Mm.
me a story, right? Some kind of proof that he was that honest, or how what a great father he was and how he took his kids under his wing and right? So these wonderful things, right?
Huh.
So then all of a sudden, like in the space of 6 months, he's totally changed. He's
Yeah.
not a man anymore. So what happened? The subconscious came, just like the Ghostbusters. The Ghostbusters, the ghost got out of the trap. That's what happened. All of this subconscious ugliness came out all of a sudden, and he became completely different. So if he never smoked before, he's smoking now.
Uh-huh.
If he never took money, he's taking money now. If he never cheated, he's cheating now, right? If he never eat junk food, he's eating junk food now, right? So every kind of thing right? And that's what the midlife crisis is. The midlife crisis is the proof that my childhood has been resisted and fought and stopped over and over and over again for sometimes 30 years. I think if you can even believe that.
And then all of a sudden there's something that brings it back up and
Yes,
out.
that's right. And so that's what buckers
Interesting.
are. And
Okay.
so people have never heard of buckers. They don't know what it is,
Yeah.
right? But as I've assembled all the stories, I start realizing, and so now I have probably 15 years of talking to people about buckers, and I've interviewed buckers.
So do you think then that they were taking on a fake identity that was not their own so that they'd be either more acceptable as a spouse or say an employee or whatever it is in society, but the stressor of life that caused this midlife crisis caused them to shed that fake identity.
Well, you're calling it a fake identity, And I'm reluctant to call it fake because the Buckers don't think anything is fake. When
Mm-hmm.
they take on the value, I call it borrowing the value. They
Mm-hmm.
borrow it because this is something they can act out. They can borrow it
Mm-hmm.
and act it out for some limited period of time, but they
Yeah.
get so good at it and they start to act out the value so long that they never give it up, right? Until the moment they crash,
Mhm.
they never give it up.
Right.
But
And that
the thing
sounds like then they need to do some of the work to really find out who they really are on an
that,
identity level.
but if you think about identity, identity is what I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about the midlife crisis, people, both men and women,
Mm-hmm.
they don't really know who they are because
Right.
they're in this chaotic thing of like, oh, what do I like? What do I
Right.
want? Right? They
Yeah.
don't know. And so I'm reluctant to call it a fake identity because it's like I'm going to make a pretend identity. Uh, but what they do in living in real time is
Mm-hmm.
they are going into this chaotic state of midlife crisis, and it's not a friendly, nice place because
Yeah.
the identity of the person that looked so great and the identity of the chaotic person that looks so terrible and is destroying the family and the finances and everything.
Right.
It's total destruction of everything we hold. Like so, we hold value. We hold value to insurance. Uh, they'll destroy insurance. We
Yeah.
hold value to home ownership. They'll destroy homes. We hold
Okay.
value to property, boats and cars. They'll destroy those, right? And so that's the stuff that he held together back then. He now
Right.
destroys, and in that
Interesting.
going
Yeah.
from one place to the other, he can't actually think like, is there a right or a wrong about this? I can't do that.
Right.
And
So
so
this.
when we talk about affairs, like
Mm-hmm.
uh, that's like that's like textbook stuff. So
Yeah.
in the midlife crisis, the affair becomes not an affair. It's not an affair. This is a person I'm actually going to change. I'm going to change from my wife's relationship to this person's relationship
Mm.
because she makes me feel a lot better than the wife
This
does.
person. Right. Right. So
And so
okay.
affairs are just like a normal part of like, of course I'll sign up for an affair right now, right?
Right, because it's part of their process.
Yeah.
So then this borrowed value they've carried, in their relationship all these years, it's been shaped or crafted basically in their younger years by their history or maybe even their conditioning, or it's buried, but there's much more buried underneath even that borrowed value that then comes up eventually.
So we're talking about borrowed. Uh, why is it a borrowed value? Because
Hmm.
it was supposed to be temporary. It was supposed to
Hmm.
be a temporary thing.
Yeah.
Because the childhood chaos that these Buckers have is like an alcoholic father. When you have an alcoholic father, you have great unpredictable everything. Everything's unpredictable. Everything's a
Yeah.
surprise, right? If
Hmm.
you have a drug addict father, if you have a cheating father, if you have a gambling father, if you have, there's so many ways to destroy your life. So many ways, right? So when you're just like it becomes pick your poison. What poison are you going to take? Because you got to have some poison. Which poison are you
Hmm.
going to use? So my mother was an alcoholic because that's what she did to go and solve her childhood. Her childhood was traumatic with an angry
Hmm.
father, and so she would go to drink. And when she go to drink, she'd drink on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then after that, she would be off the beer. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, next week, she's back again, right? All seasons of the year.
Hmm.
So she was walking home in the snow. She was walking home in the summer, right? She was coming home at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, right? Because that was my life, right? I get to
Yeah.
see that. So
Yeah.
even while I see that, I see my father, who's a teacher, and he's also a gambler after horse racing. So he loves horse racing, right? So he loves to gamble. And so I'm between a gambler and an alcoholic. And so what I had for the two of them, that when they got into a sober moment, they would pull me aside separately, and my
Hmm.
mother would say to me, "You know, we'd have more if your father didn't gamble so much." And the father would take me and said, "You know, we'd have more if your mother didn't drink so much." Right?
Hmm.
So what they did is they canceled each other out, and so
Yeah.
today I cannot gamble and I cannot drink.
Right. There you go. And so, what you're talking about at the basic level is a shift that has to happen in each person that you're working with at an identity level because they're dealing with some of that chaos in their own marriage and in their own lives. And so when they stop living from whatever space that they're in and really start to do that excavation, that inner work, they can then shift their own mind state and then also shift the relationship itself. Like
So
a relation, the people who you're in relationship with, whether romantic relationships, familial relationships, or even working relationships, business relationships, can't stay the same if you're changing inwardly.
that's right. But
Yeah.
but that becomes a determination on your own part. It's
Yeah.
your decision that you're going to change. So now we think, if I got to decide, I got to change.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's like, there's got to be more to that idea than just I decided to change. Nobody decides to say it. They don't decide to change. There's got to be something that's driving it. There's got to be an idea.
Yeah.
So, like the idea that thoughts are things, uh,
Mm-hmm.
when the idea that um, uh, my, let's say, you've got a childhood story where your dad becomes a person who has a born again experience,
Mm-hmm.
and he changes like suddenly. And he
Mm-hmm.
changes. When he changes, he doesn't borrow values anymore. Now he takes them on as his own, and
Mm.
he starts to take on values that he admires and that he wants. Now
Yeah.
that's very different than borrowing values like Buckers do.
Okay.
And
Okay.
because he takes them on, is he owns them. He
Yeah.
takes them on slowly and he starts to own them. That's very different than Buckers. So that would be a guy who has a father who demonstrated what a big change looks like.
Yeah.
So if he has that inspiration from his father, he says, "Gosh, I could do that." Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of thing you've got to have. You've got to have something that demonstrates to you that I can make that change. Like,
Nice.
not everybody
Nice.
can do it.
That is true. And for those who are listening right now to this, who are in a marriage where they feel like they're alone or exhausted or even doing the work, but in that work they're alone. What this kind of identity shift and healing actually require of them?
So I have an idea that I would always repeat to myself.
Mm.
I've repeated it so much that I put it on a little can wrap and kept it on a can in my by my desk. And
Mm-hmm.
the idea was there's always a way. And it seems
Mm.
like what a simple shallow thing. There's always a way. Uh, but in the context of
Yeah.
this world is not a world that is potential and possibility. This is a world of there's no way. This is a no way world.
Hmm.
It's a no way world with a lot of negative belief. And
Yeah.
because a lot of negative belief runs the place, you're surrounded by there's no way.
Hmm.
And so people have the phrase, there's no way.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no way. Oh, there's no way you're going to do that, right? So all the expressions of there's no way, it's a no way world, right?
Yeah.
So when you say the words, there's always a way, what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing is you're opening up the roof and you're saying, oh, there's always a way. Now, I don't maybe not know right now what that way is, but
Right.
just opening the idea there's always a way changes everything
I
because
like that.
you're starting to tell a story. The
Yeah.
story is there's always a way.
Yeah.
And then you have
That's brilliant because there's so many people that feel like, well, I've tried everything and they're on the verge of giving up.
that becomes the story. I've tried everything.
Everything.
I've tried everything is a story. And
Yeah.
so I teach a thing called tiny stories, and tiny stories are like I've tried everything.
Yeah.
I had a lady just today. She wrote on her question. She wrote, "It never seems like it I could ever get a break. It
Hmm.
never seems like I could ever get a break." So that's what she writes. So it
Yeah.
never seems like is a story. So what does seems actually mean? It means perception.
Yeah.
It's my perceive that
Mm-hmm.
there is no way. That's what I
Yeah.
perceive. And so
Yep.
you're writing about perception when you write about the word seems. It seems like I
Mhm.
never get a break.
There you
Something
go.
always still going wrong, right? And so you can just like tell tiny story back by tiny story, and it can be very negative, and they
Yeah.
can be stacked literally one after another in a string of negative tiny stories.
Yep.
So if you start to change your tiny story into a positive tiny story, and you've got to have again a motivation to do that, to make the
Mm-hmm.
change, your tiny story's got to change. And they
Yeah.
start to change into something that means something to you.
Yeah.
What is a positive thing that I actually can like? And if my world was pretty negative, or really negative, or very negative,
Mm-hmm.
switching that thinking can become like it feels like it's impossible. But if you can get something in your life that inspires you, something in your life that you like, something that feels good, something that you can believe in, if you can find that, you can make the switch from negative thought, the negative tiny story, to a positive tiny story. And I think that's what happened to me is
Beautiful.
I was determined there's always a way, and I
Mm.
kept that in my mind. There's always a way. So no matter how negative Marcia got, no matter how much fault she found, no matter how much blame she dished out, I just kept on believing there's always a way. And so there's always a way for the way I think. And so that's what I was determined to always go back to me. It goes
Beautiful.
back to me. It has nothing to do with out there.
Yeah. I
So
love that.
when you hear really great wisdom teachers, they say, there's nothing out there, everything's in here. That's what they all say.
That's all. Yep. That
There's
all
nothing
say
out
it.
there, it's all in here.
Because that's where it all is.
But when you think about
Indeed.
this, the thoughts are things idea, uh, everything is an idea.
Yeah.
Everything in this
It
world is an
starts
idea.
out as an idea before we can see it.
So I often joke about the idea that what is Red Bull? What is Red Bull? It looks like it's a product. It looks like it's a can. It looks like it's a brand name. It looks like it's a formula. It looks like it's something to drink, right? It looks like it's all those things, but
Yeah.
it's not. Red Bull is an idea, right? What is Red Bull? Red Bull is an idea that if I drink it, I will have energy. I will
Yep.
have power. I will have strength, right? And that's what the whole thing is made around. It's made around an idea, right? So we're
Yes.
talking about something as shallow as Red Bull, like, but go to anything. Go to anything that, like, people who are inspirational leaders, like uh, Abraham Lincoln, or just name anybody in any world, politics, education, law, doesn't matter. Ideas are what changes everything. And when you get enough people buying your idea and their expression of the idea, well, everything starts to change.
Mhm.
So it's all about ideas. We've got to find the words behind the idea.
There
And
we
if you
go.
find the word behind the idea, you got the beginning of the idea. Okay. Like
Beautiful.
the
All
whole
right.
idea of being a place where you can't really believe something. You're like, I
Mm-hmm.
can't believe that. I
Mm-hmm.
can't believe that. Right? Why not? I don't know. I just can't
Yeah.
believe it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's because that idea is not part of what's going on in the subconscious or conscious
Yeah,
minds.
but
Yeah.
that's where the ideas are in the
That's
conscious
right.
and subconscious.
There you go.
So the Larry Bilotta story is a story of how one person solves the problem for
Hmm.
himself, and when he solves the problem for himself, his world changes.
Which is a story then that everybody can have.
It is.
So what you've shared today, Larry, is really about an inward journey towards awakening so that you can really recreate your life and now you help other people to be able to do the same, because at the core of everything that you're saying is that you are not powerless in your relationship, whatever the relationship. You are not
But I want
powerless.
to point out, if I did not have Marcia,
Hmm.
I wouldn't have learned any of this.
Yeah, that's
None of
right.
it. Without her. So I needed a painful person in my life to
Yep.
learn all this. So the
Yep.
painful person makes it all possible. I want to close with that. The painful
I
person makes it
love
all.
that. That's perfect closing. Larry, where can people find you?
So the You Can Save This Marriage website, youcansavethismarriage.com, is where the programs are. But if they search Larry Bilotta on YouTube, there's a lot of videos on the Larry Bilotta channel there,
Nice.
and so people they get a lot of those ideas in the videos.
Wonderful. All right. I'll make sure your website is in the show notes. And thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story and the work that you now do in the world. And to my audience, if this episode spoke to you, please share it with someone who you feel needs to hear it. And if you're looking to make a similar change in your relationship, I highly recommend you reach out to Larry and have a conversation. I also would offer or request that if this podcast speaks to you on a regular basis, I ask that you leave a review and subscribe to wherever you're listening or watching. And until next time, keep doing the inner work, because it is always leading you somewhere worthwhile. Take care. Thanks for watching. If you are ready to move beyond survival into greater alignment, greater clarity, and transformation, I'd love to support you. An alignment call is where that journey begins. Take a moment, click the link in the show notes, and schedule your alignment call with me, and let's explore what's possible for you together.